if you are a new therapist, start to understand confidentiality, the limits of confidentiality, informed consent, your ethical codes, and the law. These are 5 things that you really, really have to use supervision before you take information that you have learned in the therapy room outside a session. So let's talk about it. When we think of confidentiality, what's said in the therapy room stays in the therapy room. The limits of that confidentiality. If you're a danger to yourself, if you are a danger to others, if I suspect someone is being abused, neglected, now I become a mandated reporter by law. Let's go a little bit further. A parent signs up their child for session, maybe 13, 14 years old, or maybe younger, for sessions. You have to talk about informed consent. You got to make sure you explain that not only to the minor child, but also to the parent, right? Because the parent has legal access, right, to their children's medical records, like your treatment plans. What's in your treatment plans? What's in your progress notes? Now, remember, we operate on the ethical principle of that we do no harm to our clients. It's a lot with, maybe they are exploring their gender identity and they do not have supportive family members, right? And so you as a clinician have to be very mindful about information that they may share with you in a session, because if they're going to be harmed at home because you disclose that information to a parent, that is your ethical, that falls in line with ethical codes. Sometimes clients might be struggling with different substances and they may not want their parents to know. And I know, as much as, I'm a parent, and as much as that sounds horrible to hear, that a therapist will know that my client is experimenting with marijuana, experimenting with, different substances or alcohol and things like that, and not tell me, that sounds very troubling as a parent to hear. But again, it's that balance of upholding client confidentiality, explaining to the client about informed consent, and then also doing no harm, which is part of your ethical code. So if a 10-year-old, has access to cocaine, we definitely want to know, like, how are you getting access to cocaine, or how are you getting access to these type of substances? So that might be a DCF mandated report. Maybe a 16 or 17-year-old, and the thinking might be a little bit different. But as troubling as that may sound, therapists are not obligated to share that information. So let's bring in the law. This is where the law comes into place. Whatever, whether it's the law or your ethical codes, and usually sometimes it's the law, sometimes it's the ethical codes too. Whatever gives your client the greatest protection of their confidential information, their HIPAA information. So whatever gives them the greatest protection, ethically, as a therapist, you are to honor that. And sometimes that get really tricky. I've never been in this situation where I had to go before the courts and kind of stand on ethical codes while the law is saying you need to do this, you need to do that. But I have heard of people being in those type of situations. Again, I'm taking it to like the extreme of things, but it just goes to show that before you share information as a therapist, get good supervision. Is this something that needs to be shared? The teenagers and stuff that I work with, I talk about honesty, especially when now, if they said, like, okay, my mom, my dad, or whoever, they don't know this. But I talk about honesty in a way that, if we can bring this together in a family session or whatever, I can be there to kind of help, with the conflict or whatever, and, kind of building up their trust that they're able to share that information. So it's all about honesty, but it's also giving them that time and not pushing them into revealing that information. So before you share something, and sometimes, we work in certain spaces and it feels really casual where you're like, oh, and I'm just going to share that with the mom. You have to uphold all 5 of those things. If I'm missing anything, somebody let me know. But you have to uphold all of that. Ask yourself, do I need to share this information with this client so they can share this information in a safe space, in a supportive way? Is this information parts of the limits to confidentiality? Do I have a duty? Do I have a mandate? Informed consent. You do know your parents have access to your medical records. And this is a discussion, informed consent, confidentiality, your limits. This should be your very first discussions you have with your clients in sessions before you even start to even explore, process, whatever you're going to do. Your parents will have access to your medical records. They will have access to your treatment plans. They may be required to sign off on your treatment plans. What does the law in my state say? There's some states that say like a kid gets to a certain age, the parents have to step out of the examining room at a doctor's. And it's the same thing for therapy. If the doctor asks them certain questions without their parent present, and that becomes that protected information between the client and that doctor, that clinician. Your ethical codes are, remember again, clients are interviewing you as much as you are interviewing them. They are looking for red flags to see, like, if you're telling me that everything I said to you is confidential, I might throw some nuggets out there and see just how confidential you're going to be with me. Some little things out there just to test the boundaries and test the waters, just to see if they can, like, kind of reel you in. Professions like the counseling profession, we have a set of ethical codes. Social workers have a set of ethical codes. Psychologists, psychiatrists, whoever, everyone has ethical codes that they have to follow for their licensure. So make sure you're seeking supervision before you're just like, zip it. Learn how to take a pause and think before you share. Save it for supervision.